Hello, Americans, people from Wethersfield, New England, but from Wethersfield. When I was a kid, before I was born, there were child abusers involved with elderly homes. Everyone shock and awe, a certain type of victim slash hyper victim. That is only nature of defense or help to each age and nature of difference. And America's founders, through James Madison, had this declassified, the proper communications for and about it. But it has not risen to overcome use slash S collusion slash S with what they said, which the only founder that they directed us, what they said, is the only founder they directed us to pretend that we know or allow other people to pretend they know. The name of is James Madison. A breaching method kept us from, it read this declassified, it was sophistication before we had anyone as sophistication. Increasingly, people at next to the campus as I went. Please, all the people I went to school with, you guys know I was nice to you. There's a former mayor Gold, and there are other mayors who influence people to pretend fake things. Also, with a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and various natures of federal criminals, including proven child abusers, leaders of kids. I recorded them then and further with the campuses of Wethersfield. They've been attaching little kids to fake ties to doctors. They have those same families and police forms. There's a Mendez brother. He's reportedly got a brother named Eric Mendez. I never had a class with either of them. I only know them through others. And one time they tried to make it fake. It wasn't the only time I ever saw him on a middle school campus. And Eric Mendez was real fast and was in a class tied to the state judicial branch offices. The state judicial branch offices from Connecticut and Wethersfield, Connecticut, and the state corrections offices are increasingly collusions with organized crimes and databases. Investigators being having been used remotely, criminally, foreign influence, tactically, delusions, raw at the same time with foreign countries, the same in the ages of their family members, their neighbors. Why? How really? Everyone's forced to speak through others too, where force is worse than groupthink. Because these are also people involved. I was next to the World Trade Center towers the morning of the attack and the night before it. Increasingly, these are people that Wethersfield police brought up in threats to me and predicate acts against me. And they're forging and switching names, refusing to get on paper. And while exceptions show they were illegitimate, they're making multiple falsified police reports, changing arresting officers' names, faking ties to all ages, and building on that each year. They've been these are this is a breaching method recorded using and having used named on all sides of criminal and civil cases. The news names next, intelligence next to them, and the interbranch names, and the intelligence tied to them at the same time, collusion slash S, then further personally with the same house slash S, further involved with Phil Cololo. Phil Cololo is further involved with some Mendez police and people with the name O'Connor or O'Neill. There are people with the name O'Neill who have their students and kids. Also, a DeMoro family. Recorded confessed demonstrate firm has federal evidence as crimes and their roles with home break-ins. And Heather Hansen also told me what confessed recording them. There she was forced to collusion. These people with the FBI, even if they directed that in the courts, they didn't direct all of it, and there was time uses of it as the rules with body dumping spots and proven child abusers, leaders of kids years apart. A Joshua Stryker and Eric Oliveri are some of the people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed involved with at Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut. They've been planting predicate acts collusion slash S with databases, putting fake things in them with their mouths. They're already used by investigators already used remotely, criminally, foreign influenced, tactically delusions raw. And they're men and women with the name Bobby with the intelligence community, foreign and domestic, whether they realize or not. They're involved with Covington Street in New Britain, Connecticut, with a bunch of people that were on my street, intercities through time, involved in planting evidences between my campuses. Two speech class teachers, one of them made me stay back. Both of them Well, I never had a personal conversation with either of them. That was his per their roles, putting fake things in databases with people involved with both sides of criminal and civil cases through time. Educators, an educator sought me out to make confessions and demonstrate they lied about how I was going to get an A, as one of the ones involved with the World Trade Center attack indirectly, with former director of the FBI Robert Luskin and a Dean Judd and his kid, and leaders of the kids at the campuses I went. Increasingly, Mr. Murphy, and Aaron Murphy will tell you, well, various courts and FBI in other countries, people involved with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and sexual and medical offenders of kids, ones with badges too, women judges, women doctors, women judges, collusions with the prosecutors in their courts and people with their courts, with those same families. Their sense and sensibilities were affected by this. Are they have some black KKK Latino themes with a Mark Violet and others with the town lines who came on my street to plant evidences and collusions and make confessions. And that was before I knew about all their ties to Ray Colo and people with the name O'Brien. Phil Colo and people with the name O'Brien. But they have the others involved too. It has a bunch of ways that there are Secret Service involved with them. A bunch of people in the Britain's Connecticut, Central Connecticut State University in the Britain, Connecticut, they have had collusion slash S on my street through time since I was a kid and since before I lived here, before I was born, with the same house slash S and where they came from, the people that moved into the house. As one's further involved with this fiscal law and whiting forensics with a bunch of people, like people named O'Neill, and people involved with the World Trade Center attack, and with Saudis, involved with Wethersfield Police. Wethersfield Police have one that named Mendez. Apparently, he shifts names too. Oh, it's because cultural. And these are also intercultural and intracultural identity theft, fraud, slander, fake motivation screening too. They have a whole bunch of countries time collusion with them slash S. They have a whole bunch of ways. The intelligence communities confessed, demonstrated, record, confirm. They have collusions with them with syntax and people tied to a food bag off the Southstein Highway and these Mendez police. Eric Jensen and Mike Roberts, too, increasingly collusions with various natures of federal crimes and federal evidences crimes with the state judicial branch offices and names next to it. And their educators. They were also forced, checked, persuaded to collusion slash S. And with the difference, and with all the spots all along the Brooklyn Turnpike and Route 3 and Route 175 from the founding locations in Old Wethersfield and where George Washington had to come to be with the French general right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War. We're supposed to know how everyone was counter extorted. They had to counter extort everyone to be at the Declaration of Independence. They had to counter extort everyone to be at the Constitutional Convention. They had to counter extort the North and the South to start breaking free from what none of them were allowed to break free from, like how they had to stay roles against all women with the laws, against all black people's rights about even North and South. They had roles before our founders were born, with slavery only permitted. Anyone was speaking out about it against outside of internationally monitored conversations, they were sentenced. Same thing against the women's rights. Same thing. The difference of that, their roles with that formerly criminally punishable, with the breaching method, or the overt criminal enterprises, the private ones, the terrorists. When did that stop being a function by the breaching method that had that entrenched North and South? These are also people that have been changing and faking digital evidences with whiting forensics and with the intelligence families associated with a whole bunch of people tied to a O'Neill family and their kids, intercities, West Hartford campuses. West Hartford's got a bunch of people tied to a neighbors of and as uh, forgot his name, Joseph Dennis. I never saw Joseph Dennis on campus in my life. He's one of the people that was influenced. A whole bunch of people tied to former mayors who had time collusions with overt criminal, a whole bunch of other countries trying to make fake exceptions of knowing me off campuses so they can use that for what it has something to do with their confessions tied to Route 175 and their roles with Central Connecticut State University in the Britain and with with federal, identity theft fraud. They have relative delusions too. You guys, there's nothing against Joseph Dennis. There's a former Mayor Gold too. Put fake ties to me on my campuses. So please, anyone from Wethersfield, I've been asking for a response. And what they did on Facebook, I asked for that. They committed predicate acts against me because they can't afford to have discerned how they've been putting fake transcripts at the campuses. They have the news collusion /S. WTNH with the FBI has a whole bunch of people tied to this O'Neill family and people that were involved with who said that there's a one of the people involved further with proven child abusers, leaders, and kids years ago, and further with the campuses, rolls with it. Other natures of organized crimes, and people with the former mayors involved in the work criminal enterprises, in the networks. They also said Lance Cuddy is a name. I never saw him on a campus I went in my life, Lance Cuddy. They tried to they have federal evidence of crimes of people with a Alina's Pizza on Park Street and with a Daryl Sullivan. He has wire crimes and mail crimes with the FBI and the lawyer of the FBI. Former FBI Director Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act. Increasingly, too, I never had a word with Dawn LaConche. She's recorded, confessed, demonstrated fraud. I never saw her on a campus in my life, but she has collusions of people that have been putting predicate acts in databases with former mayors and people in campuses databases and with houses and businesses next to Hartford Hospital, involved with names next to it, with identity theft, fraud, slanders, with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, sexual medical offenders of kids. Get them the heck on paper. Get this Leahy family fake conversations and ties to me. With a bunch of courts personally and professionally involved with them, criminally foreign influence. All sides of criminal and civil cases, like in a 2006 district court case in New Haven. They have collusions with a Brian Silver there, and with a bunch of people next to Fox Connecticut News in Hartford, Connecticut, who also have collusions with that all along Hangdog Lane. And Two Rod Highway, and conjunctions to it and to that, like Route 3, and the state judicial branch offices. Is increasingly too with victims advocates involved with overt criminal enterprises and sexual medical offenders of kids. I've collusions with crime scenes orchestrated to put fake things to cover up how there were collusions with uses of all ages and natures of investigators, remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactically, illusions, draw. They had the competence to speak for the law. We wouldn't have had black people's rights of eyes left out. So they have a black female judge. This detective Samuda with the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, should should apologize too with Judge Napolitano. And I want a response because there are more things I didn't even listed. A whole bunch of lists. There were untimely deaths at Trinity College involved with this principal being upskirt nature. I caught them with worse organized crimes with the campus and with that guy. And with his confessions, he brought up more names involved with it. They hid that from you, Wethersfield families and parents distinctly, because they're also attaching you and your kids to fake conversations with yourselves. They're setting up instances that this breaching method showed them how to like things that it caused them to learn. That is not really the Constitution unabridged. There are also people involved with religious themed syntax who have been planting evidences on all sides of kids' houses, and then when they're adults exploiting that. Increasingly, people with the name domain are brought up in demonstrated collusion /S intercities with people next to Fox Connecticut News with the FBI director and his educators involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and relative to abuses, sexual and medical, mixed with other natures of organized crimes, where they're keeping people's mouths shut or pretending they're opening their mouths honestly when they're not. The differences of guilt are used to hide behind and through by the breaching method, that one sickly non-distinctly, north and south, having been entrenched. Why and how that hasn't been forced to be valued by the educators using their knowledge of good and evil proper is because they have been incapable of using their knowledge of good and evil proper because they were child abused. You guys were child abused. In other words, I have recorded proofs, but there are people at Hartford Hospital with interagencies with their kids, putting fake uses of drugs and fake transcripts with themselves into databases And they have collusions with organized crimes at polling campuses. And there's increasingly people with Quinnipiac University have roles with people named Kevin Harris. I never had a word of conversation with Kevin Harris in my life. He's one of the ones involved with identity theft, fraud, and abuses of the daughter of one of the principals I went to school with one of the girls who was making confessions with WTNH. And they're, in other words, I'm not even trying to call them on the phone because the police forms are using fake phone transcripts, changing and faking phone transcripts and digital evidences, including with whiting forensics, with foreign and domestic military, Navy, too. In other words, they don't understand the extent of it. Increasingly, people with conjunctions to the networks, too, and with the exceptions like public television. So, John Maiano, I only know seeking me. He sought me. He was influenced to seek me out to make confessions and demonstrations and to lie about what came first. I had no that. That's why one of the reasons they had me stay back. People tied to him were involved that didn't even have classes. That's why they didn't. My campuses can record, confess, demonstrate, confirm there were influences from off the campuses, foreign and domestic, that made hyper additional pollutions that they didn't want to have. That's why, in other words, they put fake, but others from off the campuses put fake ties, fake nature ties, fake motivations for it. A Christopher Cullen is increasingly tied to child abusers, leaders, and kids years apart, first forest. I had nothing to do with him. He sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm collusions with that, as people involved with the World Trade Center attack too, and and narratives by only time I was ever contacted once for a school reunion is by people that didn't even went to a private school. People weren't even my class, like people named Kerr and Demore and Kalol with the corner of with the Town Line Drive and South State Highway. These are also people with the other Town Line Drive. Where the Wethersfield Police Department is now. A bunch of people on um, Church Street recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they were forced to collusions against themselves. Everyone forced to speak has something to do with the roles with Mr. Neville and people all along Route 3 involved with the state judicial branch offices. And, and with uses of that, where and how these are people involved also with wire crime acts and methods, false play, all sides of criminal and civil cases, putting the same sequence shift stuff out with the interbranch and fake transcripts. So there's also people named Finelli. I never saw Jason Finelli. He tried to make one fake. I think that's his name, and he's got other brothers and family members. I don't even know their names, but these are people further involved with reportedly proven or arrested for child abuses on Valley Crest. But those are different houses and people, and there are proofs that they might have put that up to pretend that's what I'm speaking about. I'm speaking about the DeMoro family and this Finelli family who have roles with World Trade Center predicate acts, and people involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids, identity theft, fraud, things, wire crime acts, methods, and others who brought up the principal child abuser to me first, and I still haven't been responded to. And they have ongoing things with a Miss Michael Emmett, and there's a Mike Levine too involved with online Town Line Drive, which is also with there are also people tied to Congressman Larson and reported family member of his. When I was in an algebra class, there's a Mike Domain who was in that class, and someone was reported his relative, and Anthony Agman. Anthony Agman is one of the ones changing and faking digital evidences with the FBI and with various courts with sexual and medical offenders on Facebook, and with these Mendez police that fake conversations with me at the Wethersfield police station. As collusions with that when I was a kid, that wasn't at all, and I was an adult when I wasn't at all. And they forced my Saudi X to collusion / S with them. Increasingly with people named Demar. I never saw around Demar. They have collusions. Those are ones involved with home break-ins in my areas through time. And his girlfriend was involved with him with that, and then with the other people with it, with a Halpern house. And one of the Joe DeMoros looks a lot like that. Aaron Mate and Judge Napolitano's social media. And Fox Connecticut News is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed collusions with them. with names next to them in Hartford, Connecticut, who are also collusions next to WFSB in Rocky Hill, Connecticut. Increasingly, all along Route 3, they have, and conjunctions to it and to that. Wethersfield Pizza House, too, has wire crime acts and methods with them, and identity theft, fraud, slanders. And between campuses, intercities. There's a Stephen Stocko and recorded capacity demonstrated firm involved with the identity theft, frauds, federal evidences, crimes, identity slanders with people from New Britain Central Connecticut State University, and involved with the FBI director Robert Luskin and various courts, family members, and my neighbors and their educators have him involved with what they shouldn't have hid from my parents, what I recorded. Increasingly, too, a John Maiano and a Fred Guzet have collusions at with a modern pastry, with the FBI and other agencies, and people with sexual and medical offenders of kids. I don't know what they said to modern pastry people, but I never saw them around the school either. These are people that were putting people in my classes to build upon predicate acts that were put the year before that, increasingly. A DeMoro family and people with the name Finelli and others on Valley Crest Street involved with those child abusers reportedly two different houses with that reported. I'm talking about two different ones. And there's a schedule house there too, involved with military, involved with medical offenders of kids and the World Trade Center attack. There's a schedule family. I never had a word of conversation with them in my life. And there's a Delafair family. I never saw them around campuses. There's a Delafair family that's involved with these Mendez police still, and they're educators with identity theft, fraud, things, putting me in fake conversations with everyone around me, including my family since I was a kid. Fake ties to themselves and nature of themselves. They have roles with cousins named Scalora and Phil Colol of one of the houses further involved with violence too, and people and the interbranch switching names, and they have roles with guns and stuff like that. We're gonna have problems because they're also making confessions. The other person non-verbally confirms it. You guys can watch it. You have to get on paper to keep peace. In other words, that's what they can't stand because they've been fake too long. Their whole careers were used criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. Make sure that they apologize to you guys to using the right to lie where they don't have the right to lie. And get them on paper, these Mendez police. Get me off the fake conversations at the Wethersfield police with them. These are people involved with the World Trade. I was next to the World Trade Center tower in Manhattan that morning before it and the night before it. And I was an observer in the Ninth Circuit Court. These are also people increasingly recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirmed collusions interstates and intercities and intra-cities. These are also foreign and domestic military involved with remote uses of the Wethersfield Police Department and hyper additionally their social media used criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. And the ones of the FBI. FBI is not no is with this too. They know this is recorded to an extent. See, these are types of the CIA is involved with syntax here. Oh, but people will make you use the right, even though it's a federal crime to lie about certain things. And regardless of it's a lie or not, it records other things. Eric Jensen will tell you this increasingly too. All sides of my house and the parallel streets. They've been planting evidence. It's been identity theft, fraud, slanders as people collusions with the databases and and all kinds of ties to a Debbie Gold and a Lee Gold. I never had a conversation. I never saw a Lee Gold around in my life, but he's involved with some sexual medical offenders of kids and intra religious and like private school kids and kids that don't even have classes with each other, putting identity theft, fraud, slanders. In other words, uh, 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 what's his name? A Paul Zano. I never hung around with him. Then in 1994, they may try to make a fake acceptance and made me stay back for that one class. That I never had a conversation with the teacher personally. Is increasingly involved with people in that class have roles interstates with all sides of criminal and civil cases, like a Mike Pandolf was involved too with people all along Route 175 and conjunctions to it and to that from the old places in Old Wethersfield, like Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum, next to the witch trials place. Then and now they have other communicated about why and how. Really, George Washington and the French General Matt. The breaching method forced it, but James Madison's counter extortion forced it too. And the plural founders behind him in that plan, which are distinct from the people who are at the Declaration of Independence, as far as we know, and observably. And everyone had to hide their actual motivations for it. Everyone had to pretend free speech to an extent, or that body was sentenced. Not collusion slash S, but the breaching method that was capable of using everyone from abroad remotely, while it also used them remotely. England doesn't even remember the history of English. And there were black white collusion slash S with that game. Entrenched with changing black people as white survivors and making rolls with it North and South colonies, more than 13, and then America's founders were born. What nature of unity was capable of being, what nature of independence, what was inherent to active to and progressive to the nature of debate, slash S. Roles sensing for the breaching method. Roles with sense and sensibilities used remotely by the breaching method, as it is when you guys read principles, because you were child abused. So get them on paper. New Britain Superior Court also has an Eric Mendez involved with his older brother. Interbranch. The branches individually grouped it together. They also have the Facebook page with the rape threats at New Britain Superior Court as a part of what was with the principal being with the upskirt picture. They were involved with other natures of organized crimes with the kids. Also, the daughter on Facebook of a Leahy family, multiple Leahy families. She said one of the little girls sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm she had collusion with them. I didn't respond at all. I never had word on Facebook. The Leahy family faked conversations with me too, and they've been putting fake things in the databases and with foreign and domestic. There are a whole bunch of other families and ones with the name Lombardo also involved with the same house slash S on my street. Those families affected. I never saw them on my street in my life. They affected confessions on my street when I was a kid and then an adult. There's various ways we because and these are also people in the Britain Superior Court, and the District Court, and Harper Courts. Their family and intimate ties, foreign and domestic military, all sides of the campuses too. They're planting evidence on sides of campuses to inter and intra cities. Same ones at corners. In other words, so various ways through communications, distinctly from what he said, because he said different things. But I'm recording what he sought me out to make confessions about. John Maya. He's involved with sequence shifts. I never saw his. His mother walked by me one time real quick, and he affected that. They were influenced to affect that. I know he was never been in my house one time, John Maya. There was one exception to fix a wall real quick. They try to make that look like they're putting fake ties, fake nature. He's been on rolls with all kinds of investigations. Investigators use remotely, criminally, foreign influence, tactical delusions, raw. At the same time, with people from other countries, as the ones on my street from other areas involved with child abusers of it with them, and his conversations with his coaches behind my back too. He has a Perone family also involved with his narrative regarding a tennis racket. He borrowed a tennis racket from me, and then he told me he'd give it to her. They're putting fake ties to me with a Perone family. Is further involved with this Violet and others with Harper Hospital, with sexual medical offenders of kids and fake transcripts, fake ties, and they're acting so others can take a picture and try to make it look like they know me. Something to do with too with their roles with the Perone family and people that said they were intimately tied to him are involved with Town Line Drive and Sausteen Highway from years before the new businesses there. And through the change, there were forced persuaded to collusions with foreign and domestic intelligence involved with that corner. These are also ones involved with Officer Jerry Miller, who said that there's people with the name Jerry Kerr involved. There are people with the name Jerry Kerr who sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. They had roles with along the Burl Turnpike and with the people that worked at Caldor, which is now a Walmart, and Ames, which is now a Walmart. But they have roles also with the judges and prosecutors and people from other countries over work criminal enterprises, private ones, and interreligious nutbags, and people all along state routes 3 and routes 175, and conjunctions to it and to that is one of the things they're communicating confessions regarding. And they're pretending other as their roles we can record too. That they're pretending other while they know that they're recording that because they already recorded it. They painted themselves into corners. So please get them into branch on paper too, and then we'll deal with the foreign because there are a whole bunch of other countries involved. And what are they doing with the Wethersfield town offices with these names? There are more involved. I don't know the name of. They know the name of me. It has it's ones with involved with Afghan leaders of kids involved next to Trinity College and at Trinity College with people on my street that have been planting evidences with them. Also next to Trinity College and at Trinity College with a Joshua Straker. I never saw him on my street in my life. Never saw him on Fair Lane in my life. He's recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed about collusion/S with people on Fair Lane Drive with syntax, who are also by the Wethersfield police. In other words, their roles with Trinity College, putting fake things in the databases. And at other campuses, I went behind my back with the people involved with the World Trade Center attack, intercities and interstates. Various natures of federal criminals and co-defendants, some of them as co-defendants of former director of the FBI in a 2006 district court case. Right before that, too, they're involved with next to and at Fox Connecticut News, collusions with people also years before that and long term, like on and off the campuses. They're planting fake things. They're planting collusion/S with the predicate acts with facts, methods/S, and uses of their own differences in identities remotely. A bunch of people, intercities along Route 3, in conjunctions to it and to that, and Route 175 in Wethersfield, in conjunctions to it, like in the other cities. They're also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. I only know them recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed that they have federal evidences, crimes, roles, and putting fake things in databases, acting tied to repeating what others say. With these are with the families like involved with medical and second. They have probate court judges involved with 6 things I recorded at the elderly homes, like they at the with the kids with with the with the Hartford Hospital, with the corrections officers. Joe DeMoro and a Ray Colal were influenced to seek me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. They have collusion/S with the state corrections officers and the state judicial branch officers, and names next to conjunctive to that. As their roles increasingly since I was a kid, with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and with the news and names next to the news at the same time with interbranch forging and switching names. So these aren't complicated things. These are all, in other words, please, someone get them on paper. Watch what I caught them doing with the kids, and lies to you since you were kids, sickly distinctly from everyone else. This is not just the Wethersfield campuses and the intercities campuses involved. Two, there's a Luigi Guerrero. I never had a word of conversation with Luigi Guerrero. He's increasingly collusion/S with people trying to plant fake motives and trying to fishing for cover means to cover up because they have obligations by the law and as law names that they can't follow, and they have delusions. They have to hide that. On a mass scale, this breaching method keeps people with delusions needing to hide it and valuing the experts tactically delusions raw. We're gonna examine what's replacing with James Madison and our founders plural left declassified to be amended with what they said, and which is also to not leave out how there was a breaching method, measuring and maintaining everyone an extent of collusion/S against themselves and everyone else, otherwise that body was sentenced. So there was a probate court judge, too, and the family member of people named Della Fera. It has something to do with their collusions. I never saw them on campuses. These are one of the things with intimate ties of people tied to probate court judges, inter and intra cities. They make confessions. to strangers, but I also have ties to people like a Fred Grisey and a John Maano, who are strangers that sought me out. I never tried to seek out Fred Grisey on my life out. They sought me out when I was a kid on my street to make long confessions, communicated. And the campuses hid this, what I recorded tied to it. These are people increasingly with the former mayors. I'm with between public and private schools involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. Also next to the Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University are people increasingly involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders who planted and Hartford Hospital. Hartford Hospital has all kinds of medical corruption and overt criminal enterprises and private ones involved with them with a Fred Grisey and a uh, people named Mike Violet and Mark Violet. I never had a word of conversation with Mike Violet and people tied to them Tim O'Brien, Andrew O'Brien. Their roles with intelligence next to the state capitol. These are also people involved with Sandy Hook, sexual and medical offenders of kids, with the state judicial branch officers and corrections officers, Sandy Hook Promise, and people involved with Alex Jones, and the timing of them with the suit narrative regarding him. And that's right when I was speaking about we have to ask yourself what the witch trials place next to Webb House is about. Asking what it's about, even if everything was made up. Think about the other laws that were entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies at the same time. And what happened if anyone didn't follow the sense and sensibilities by that formula, which or the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, international companies, countries, individually grouped in together, humanity voicing that through an eye system's tactical terror, than the one that makes distinction /s to us. Nature's complete identity, generating distinctions A through. But we have prevented short words by that, let alone the protraction. Action. Who disbelieves